Good morning, this is AJ, the Mindloft podcast. Today's episode I want to talk more about the idea of what McKenna called the eschaton, and how we create mythology about how there's going to be a big change, how the world's gonna, society's gonna see this. We try to imagine it, but it's really unimaginable, McKenna said. And also, before I get going, today's episode is kind of special because my little boy is here with me. So you might hear, it might not work out, but you might hear some noises coming in from the background. He's sitting right in front of me. But the eschaton, in the olden days, the best technology they had were gods. So they came up with this idea that God would come back, and there would be Armageddon, some kind of reckoning, and gods would torch the earth, scorch the earth. But then when technology increased, we had airplanes. That was like the big, huge jump in technology. And then people started coming up with this mythology that aliens were going to come. How big of a change that would be. If we knew there was another intelligence out there, we wouldn't have any need for wars or destruction, and society might change for the better. Or there's the myth that they would come and destroy us all, like in Independence Day with Will Smith, just perch over our buildings and just let their cannons loose. And now that we're seeing the exponential growth of technology, and so the aliens myth is Arthur C. Clarke, and McKenna talked about that book by Arthur C. Clarke, Children's End, and he said if you want to read a good myth about the eschaton, then about the end of days and how we imagine it, read that one. So I picked that one up. I'm reading it. Then there's there's the new way, because we're seeing the exponential growth of technology. There's a new way that we come up with this myth, and that's the singularity. We come up with this idea that technology is advancing so rapidly that one day it'll kind of the growth will become so fast that we can't notice it happening. We have to merge with our machines and join them, and that's the thing. And we can't imagine what's on the other side of the singularity. It pulls us in, and what comes out on the other side is basically a new dimension. Yeah, he agrees. My boy agrees. That's gonna be wild. So, if you're gonna pick up a book in the fall or the winter, you should read my book, Sumire. I've written most of it. It's about this kind of eschaton idea as it relates to the singularity. And I was reading through it. I read the first 10 document pages, so maybe about 20 pages or so in book form, and I need to add more description. I realized I was doing the key. This is more about writing now, but I was doing the key thing that I say not to do when I talk to my students, is I was telling instead of showing. And sometimes it's hard to determine whether or not it's okay. You can read, like if you read some Huxley, he'll just tell for 5 pages, so they won't have any character interaction or any description of setting. But though when I'm reading those parts of books, I'm really unhappy. I'm like, man, this is boring. There's no life to this section. Even when they're good writers, I can't understand why they like to do that. So I'm going to try to not do that and go back and add more description. It's going to add some length to my book, so that's good. I think it's only about 200 pages, and I've told a good story. It's kind of short, but I think it's exciting at times, and the characters do come alive, but not in the beginning. So I'm going to go back and fix that. I don't know if you can hear it outside, but there's an army of cicadas. They're out in full force. It's so loud. There's a really good NPR episode about cicadas, and it's what is it, Radio Lab, and how when you listen to the sound of them, you're really listening to love making and mating calls and different frequencies layered, and they're talking to other individual cicadas. In that chaos of cicada noise, they're actually talking to each other on an individual level. Well, what they're doing, so this is my neighborhood. We have cicadas, the big 3 right now. We have this car alarm going off that you can probably hear. It goes off every 30 minutes. It's this, in Japan they call him a Yankee, basically, Yankee, and they're kids with like yellow hair, and they speak with really rough language. Like, it's not slang, but it's the type of Japanese that's like, it's not refined. It's not proper. Like when you watch gangster movies, Japanese Yakuza movies, it's the kind of language they use. This kid's not a gangster, but I guess you could say Yankee is maybe a wannabe gangster, or a gangster at heart, but they don't do anything wrong besides swear, like use bad words and loiter and ride their mopeds without helmets. Or what they like to do is just because there's pretty strict rules, so they like to just put their helmet around their neck, like the strap hangs back on the back of their head. But his car alarm goes off every 30 minutes or so. Let's see if it does. I'll talk for another 30 minutes and we'll check that out. Okay, so there's that, the cicadas. And then there's this dog named Maya. It lives, I'm going to say literally it lives 1, 2, 3, 4 houses away. But you got to remember, these houses in Japan are really close to each other. So it would be more like 2 houses away in the States. And it's howling. It's one of those Shiba dogs. They call them Shiba Ken, Shiba Inu. And it just howls. I think it's a dog from like up north, like Akita or Hokkaido, and they're cold weather dogs. They don't like this heat. Is so humid. Yesterday it was like walking through the mist. Felt like gorillas were gonna jump out. That's how misty it was. And Sigourney Weaver was going to tell me that there's a Bigfoot around the corner. It was insane. Anyone, did you see Joe Rogan's show? That was pretty bad, I thought. I mean, it was entertaining to see Joe in his fanny pack and to see Duncan Trussell doing something. I love that guy. it's nice to see him doing some work. I don't know why he's not more famous or more popular. Honestly, truth be told, I've never seen his stand-up, so maybe he's not very good. But he doesn't need to be. They were talking about it on the show, how Duncan has a skill of podcasting. It's a like type of performance that he's turned into a career. Anyways, they went looking for Bigfoot's big feet and didn't find any, of course. And it's funny hearing them on the podcast admitting that they were just stoned the whole time, running through the woods with these crazy hillbillies. But it's worth checking out. I think they're going to get better. Bigfoot's one that doesn't really interest me. I feel like if they find a Bigfoot, unless he's super intelligent, like nearly a man, I think it's just going to be, oh, they found a monkey. Just kind of interesting because it's so far north in America where there aren't any monkeys. That would be the only interesting thing, but I'm really interested in when they start talking about the singularity. They said they interviewed Ray Kurzweil, and they went to this futurist conference, this what do you call that, life extension conference, and talked about the possibility of plagues coming to get us, and what that might look like, and how easy that could happen. But it looks pretty like they'll get better, I think. Oh, there was the dog, Maya. Did you hear Maya? So it's noisy over here in this seemingly quiet neighborhood. I have to talk kind of low because my wife's asleep, and I don't know what she would think about me making a podcast, just talking to myself while my kid plays a foot in front of me. But I don't think there's anything that weird about it. Yeah, so writing, we got a show and not tell. So I'm gonna go back. Might take me longer to dissect that book, and part of the thing is I'm in this revision editing phase. It's not creative. It's more like menial work. It's more like checking, make sure. I have to go through, and I realized that formatting 2 spaces after a period. This is boring. I'm sorry, but 2 spaces after a period can cause the formatting on an ebook to look funny. Like it can be a space on the first space of a line every once in a while, which is very noticeable to the reader. So if you're into making ebooks, you should start getting in the habit. And if you're blogging too, he's laughing. If you're blogging too, I had to catch him. It's the same kind of deal that can happen. So be sure to put just one. Get in the habit of just putting 1 space. At work, I found out a lot of my British colleagues that I work with, they've said that just 1 space is the norm over there. So I don't know. I was taught 2 spaces. I looked it up on the MLA style guide, and this MLA style guide said 1 or 2 is okay. But they did say something, or I read it maybe on a blog about grammar. Talk about a boring blog. But I read that 2 spaces had something to do with a typewriter. I don't know what it was, but I can't remember what it was, but it had something to do with using a typewriter. Anyway, let's get off that. What else is new? So I got my site is changed a little. I was trying to sell some people tea through the site. There's really good green tea where I live, and work. So put that on the site. Nobody bought any tea, so I took that off. My ebook's on there. If you want to support this show, You can buy the ebook. It's, I think, $3.06 after tax. I would love it if you bought them. This one is just a collection of short stories, but they're good. I really enjoyed writing them. I wrote another short story. It was actually the end of last summer now. Wow, what a quick year. But that one doesn't really fit. It's more of like a journalism piece. It's got some descriptive language in it, but it was about this funeral I went to, this Buddhist funeral. I'm going to put the audiobook up on the site soon as a podcast episode. You can listen to it. But if you want to read it on the go, I'm going to put up that one as like a Kindle short, like a 99-cent book. So you could download that. Maybe I'll just throw up. I think there's probably something else I could throw in there just to make it a little longer. But that one's pretty long. That's like 5,500 words, I think. So give that one a read when you see that. But other than that, you should listen to the Singularity One-on-One coming up with Socrates. I forget his name. It's like some Russian name, Victor or something. But he does a pretty good show. Sometimes it gets a little boring. And sometimes it's just pretty scientific and dry. But he said, does anyone have any questions to ask Peter Joseph? The guy who's the head of that Zeitgeist movement. He made those movies. And I wrote him a question. I said, are there any micro communities that are practicing resource-based economy? So, are there any communities trying to do that already? Because that's their goal, as far as I can remember from the movies. Really good movies. They're all on YouTube. Zeitgeist 1, 2, and 3, I think. There's the Zeitgeist movie, and then there's a Zeitgeist addendum, and Zeitgeist moving forward. One's mostly about like 9/11 and government conspiracy, government like control and conspiracy and all that. Another one's about the economy and resource-based economy and the Fed and all that. I feel like I don't know. I should go back and watch them, but he made some pretty good documentaries. There's 3 of them. But he's going to be on the Singularity One-on-One podcast, and he might ask my question, which would be kind of cool. But it would be interesting to hear, because they can't expect us to just have this like giant shift in the economy to go from pure capitalism like we have now to a resource-based economy just by passing a couple laws. I don't think that's the way America, at least America in particular, works. I think what they're going to have to do is to do it incrementally. Do like what Google Fiber is doing, and set it up set up your own city where you're doing it and showing the world how much better it is than the current economy. So that's one way, one idea. But anyway, listen to that show. It should be out now. I'm going to pause. I'm going to download it and get a little water, take a little break. I'll be back soon. Don't forget, check out my blog, AJ Snook Mindloft. If you just Google that, you can find it. The address is ajsnookauthor.blogspot.com. And I'm PB_Zen on Twitter, PBZen on Reddit. Find me on Facebook. I'm getting kind of active on there. Had fun talking with these Italian girls about Into the Wild last night. And this other guy said thank you for, what was his name? But he was like, thank you for finding me. I'm so happy. I was like, wow, that's cool that happens on Facebook. People really get into the relationships that they build and that they find. We can find like-minded folks on there. So check that out. Check out Facebook. But really check out my blog. You can email me too, ajsnookauthor@gmail. My original idea for that blog, like over a year ago, was to start a collective of artists and mostly writers, publish their stuff. I have all these tabs I can convert into writer pages for specific folks, and put all your writing or links to your Kindle books on there, and we can build a kind of an army, or if you have your own blog, I can put just your blog's link, but also publish your work on there. And I think we need to start supporting each other and build a little community of authors that criticizes each other and accepts each other and supports each other when we're struggling. And also, if somebody wants to gain recognition when they're writing, I think if you tweet out or send out your own links to your writing, it seems like shameless advertising. But if somebody else reads your story and they like it and they say, you gotta read this is good, then it gives it a little more credit. So and we can start supporting ourselves, at least supplementing our income a little with our art, creating more of an art movement where in this age of scientific materialism, which I'm really a big supporter of. I love futurology and the idea of the singularity and how we're headed to life expansion, and one day we're going to hit that point where the average age is increasing by a year or more per year. So bar a car accident or something, we're basically becoming immortals one day. But let's support each other's writing. And I gotta take care of this little guy. So catch you guys later. Bye. Hey, I'm back. I wanted to talk a little bit more about Into the Wild. That's something that's really worth talking about. What a good book and movie. But I was chatting with a couple friends yesterday, and I think one of the popular criticisms of Chris McCandless is that he was dumb. People want to say that. They want to criticize him for dying and not being prepared. And I think you can criticize him, but you don't necessarily know what mindset he was in. And it brings up this idea of personal freedom and doing what you want with the time that you have on earth and respecting that. If you respect him for walking out on society, why don't you respect him for everything else? I think death is a scary topic, and it's one that we see a life that's lost young. He was in his 20s and his early 20s, and we think that it's wasted. But if he was really living for 3 years, maybe that was enough for him. And we don't know beyond death. I've been thinking more and more about the idea that the simulation theory idea that maybe we're refractions of another being in another plane, or maybe we're wearing a costume for a party that's our life, and because it's all we know, it seems like we need to extend our life, and it seems like we need we need to take care of it. But maybe that's not what it's about. We don't know. That's the thing. I think it's pretty smart to assume that. We have to assume some things here in our one life that we have for now. We have, or else we'll be stuck, be in a mystery. And I think it's okay to get lost in that mystery. They talk about that. I think on this is the Mindloft podcast, but on the Mind Rolling podcast, they talk about getting into the mystery and living in that middle plane of mystery that we can't describe, but there is some sort of level there that is really valuable to experience on like a soul level. As I didn't explain that well, but my point is maybe McCandless figured that out. Maybe he figured something out. Maybe not. He couldn't describe it, but maybe he understood it. Maybe he had sort of wisdom. There's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. I think there's some things we can be wise about that are inexplicable. And we don't know about other people's experience. We have similar experiences and we look at each other and we say, I kind of understand who this person is based on what I've experienced and what I've seen. But people do assume too much. And I think that's what's going on with McCandless, is we're assuming we understand him. So I think just let him be a hero. Let him be. I think it doesn't hurt anybody to think of him that way. He went and he tried it. I mean, he did starve to death. He got sick. Couldn't get out of there. And he starved. Couldn't hunt. He was too weak to hunt. But he went out the way. I think he went out the way he wanted to go out. And that brought us such a good film. It's maybe the best soundtrack of any film ever. Eddie Vedder. If you haven't listened to that, you gotta listen to that soundtrack. A lot of new podcasts out right now. Chris Ryan interviews Natasha Leggero, and Daniele Bolelli's interviewing Duncan. Joe Rogan's interviewing Dan Carlin of the Hardcore History podcast. So there's a few good ones out there. Give it a listen. I'm fighting the heat here, and gonna go get a cool shower. I'll try to say a little more, maybe piece together a little podcast. This one is rambling, but maybe we just need to be like McCandless and lose ourselves in the mystery. Okay, I'm gonna read a little bit from Ram Dass's Journey of Awakening. I realized that this podcast is turning into just a ramble fest, so let's read a little bit from Ram Dass. This is chapter 4, Finding Your Way. Let it change. Though you can start meditation anytime, it's harder if your life is chaotic, if you're feeling paranoid, if you're overwhelmed with responsibilities, or if you're sick. But even starting under these conditions, meditation will help you to clear things up a bit. Slowly you reorganize your life to support your spiritual journey. At each stage, there will be something you can do to create a supportive space. It may mean changing your diet, who you're with, how you spend your time, what's on your walls, what books you read. what you fill your consciousness with, how you care for your body, or where and how you sit to meditate. All these factors contribute to the depth and freedom that you can know through meditation. You're under no pressure to rush these changes. You need not fear that because of meditation, you're going to lose control and get swept away by a new way of life. Don't fear that. As you gradually develop a quiet and clear awareness, your living habits will naturally come into harmony with your total environment, with your past involvements, present interests, and future concerns. There need be no sudden ending of relationships in order to prove your holiness. Such frantic changes only show your own lack of faith. When you are one in truth in the flow, the changes in your life will come naturally. Then he quotes Shunryu Suzuki, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, which he quotes a lot in this book, which I am reading right now. And once I finish it, I'll do a podcast on it. But the Suzuki quote is, after you've practiced for a while, you'll realize that it's not possible to make rapid, extraordinary progress. Even though you try very hard, the progress you make is always little by little. Wow, so Ram Dass made me think of this guy I saw in Duncan Trussell's forum, Family Hour forum. And if you go on there and you just search, I don't remember his handle, his screen name, but it was spiritual bipolar. And he said that being spiritual caused him to be bipolar. That's what I think he said. He produced this crazy, not crazy, I don't mean it like negative, but this high intensity driven video, 12-minute long video. You can find it on there. Go on the forum. And I felt sorry for the guy. You know, he was putting himself out there, and he said that taking a spiritual path was making him feel bipolar, or do bipolar things, go into mental hospitals, and he was very self-deprecating. He was like calling it the loony bin, and really hating on himself. And then he started a thread on there and nobody replied, so he wrote back again. It's like, what? Doesn't anybody care? Where's the love? Or what about no comments from me? Nothing. Like, it was very it seemed there's some aggressiveness behind the second email, or the second message he wrote in the thread. And then I was about to write something and I didn't, and I actually wrote something, but I didn't click send. I didn't get to finish, or didn't get to proofread it, and something came up. I was at work and I just I closed it. I didn't send my message, didn't save my message, and that was that. But Ram Dass here is saying these sudden frantic changes show your lack of faith. When you're one with the truth and the flow, the changes in your life will come naturally. And the name of this is Let It Change. This subtitle of this chapter is Let It Change. You're under no pressure to rush these changes. I mean, if it's mental illness, there's nothing. It's mental illness. But if it's mental illness catalyzed by spiritual practice, maybe it's not mental illness, maybe you're trying to rush these changes and not letting them come naturally, and you think you have to change everybody and rearrange your life and cause chaos and start from a point of destruction. Bob Marley says the only solution is total destruction. And that seems to be true, but I don't think he means physical destruction. I think he means destruction of the ego, destruction of the self, starting from scratch internally. You don't need these external changes. It's all, your whole reality is being processed inside of you. So we need to start there. This is what Ram Dass says, and I totally agree. So I'll pick up here again from this book. It's Ram Dass, Journey of Awakening. This is a really good book. It's one of his bestsellers after Be Here Now and Grist for the Mill. This is more like a manual. It's called A Meditator's Guidebook. It's definitely worth checking out. Okay, I'll do a little bit more Ram Dass, I think, in this episode next. Time to take a nap. Just continuing on with this Ram Dass idea, he says he can go all around the country, from Omaha to San Francisco, to Seattle, to Buffalo, to Tuscaloosa, everywhere thousands of people are ready to hear about spiritual awakening within. They're growing spiritually in their own daily lives without putting on far-out clothes and wearing beads around their necks. Their spiritual awakening grows from within. Sri Ramakrishna says, mention is made of two classes of yogis, the hidden and the known. Those who have renounced the world are known yogis. All recognize them. But the hidden yogis live in the world. They are not known. I think there's something egotistic about making your spiritual self known. There's something that you're putting up a barrier between you and the other by renouncing things, by talking about your spirituality as if it was separate from the everyday life. It's uncommunicable that way. It's distant. I think not talking about it, showing it rather than telling it, is the way to go. A guy named Thubten Jigme Norbu, I'm definitely pronouncing that wrong, Tibetan guy, says, it would be a mistake to think that any Tibetan would see any incongruity or harm in going from a service in Lhasa temple to the nearest house where there is a Chang drinking party being given. Nor would it be unusual to see a pleasure seeker in a boat full of revelers quietly counting the beads on his rosary. Religious activity is as much part of our life as any other activity, and religious belief and thoughts is as much part of our thinking as is our concern for where our next meal is coming from. Meister Eckhart says, it is not to be learned by world flight, running away from things, turning solitary and going apart from the world. Rather, one must learn an inner solitude, wherever or with whomsoever he may be. You can't, you start cleaning up your life. This is Ram Dass. You start cleaning up your life when you feel that you can't go on until you do. Cleaning up your life means extricating yourself from those things which are obstacles to your liberation. But keep in mind that nothing in and of itself is an obstacle. It's your attachment to it or your motive for doing it that is the obstacle. It's not an issue of eating meat or not eating meat. It's who's eating it and why. If your senses can be caught and held by something, you're still chained to the world. It's your attachment to the objects of your senses that imprisons you. Failing to break off the attachment of the senses ultimately holds you back. The minute you aren't preoccupied with what's out there, then that pull is lost. You're free to go deep in meditation. But it's not easy. It's a stinker to get to that level of purity. You start out with things like what you eat, who you sleep with, what you watch on TV, what you do with your time. Many people fool themselves and imitate someone else's purity. They do it in an imitative way, one of fear of being unholy, abstaining from something for the wrong reasons. Is no better than doing it. You can't pretend to be pure. You can only go at your own speed. As changes occur through meditation, you find yourself attracted to things that are inconsistent with your old model of who you are. Usually, for example, after having meditated in a rigorous and somewhat righteous fashion, I've taken time off to wallow in television, go to movies, take baths, and relax. Then, to my surprise, I found myself not being attracted as much as before in these diversions, but being pulled toward just sitting quietly. This new way of being didn't fit with my model of who I was. It was as if I were living with somebody I didn't know very well. My models of myself hadn't changed fast enough to keep up with who I was becoming. In Thaddeus Golas, in The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment, he says, inside yourself or outside yourself, you never have to change what you see, only the way you see it. There's a guy at my work who is just about the most negative person I've ever come into contact with. Every conversation is a complaint or a dispute or a criticism of how just awful things are. How just, things are just bad. And he complains about the school we work at, the people we work with, other schools he's seen, and how just this environments are just awful. He is truly a negative person. And he gravitates to me. He finds me. When I ride to work, he knows which bus I'm taking up to work, and he follows me and bitches at me. I think it's good for me. The other day he was bitching. He told me the same story he's bitched about before, about the conditions of a school, that he can't understand why the conditions are so horrible. And I said, look, we're not there. It's not affecting us. There's no reason. And I didn't say it in an argumentative way. And I think that worked. And he changed the subject. And I said, how's your summer? What are you going to do? And he's going to go back home, see his mother. And I think his thing is he just kind of gets stuck in a pattern, in these thought patterns, as Duncan likes to say. He just can't get out of them. They're loops. He's a car racing in a circle, and he doesn't realize there's the open road. Just gotta make a right turn instead of a little left. you keep making over and over again. You're making left turn, left turn, left turn, left turn. When you get there, you go into automatic mode. When you get to a certain point on the road, he makes a left turn. When he doesn't see the opening to the right, the open road along the beach, the porpoises jumping and the sun setting. That's the metaphor that's out there. But it's all within. It's within him. It's within me. All I can do is just find that opening, find that right turn, wherever, as often as possible. I think just find that right turn, we'll all be better off. So I'm gonna go now. I'm gonna go spend time with my family. I took the day off. I'm gonna go down there and try to affect them subtly. I think my son's sleeping, but when he wakes up, when they're awake, when we're all together, I'm going to shine from within. Hopefully a little of that light peeks out and touches their skin. Thanks for listening. I think this turned into a pretty good podcast. Again, if you have time, write a comment on my blog. On this is the AJ Snook Mindloft. AJSnookAuthor.blogspot.com. PB_Zen on Twitter. AJ Snook on Facebook. Buy my Amazon book. Collection of short stories. It's $2.99 or free if you're a Prime member. And leave a comment on iTunes as well if you can. Rate us high. It'll maybe get some people who weren't looking for us to click on us and find us and listen to those other more professional podcasts that here at the Mindloft we're aspiring to be like, such as Duncan Trussell and Chris Ryan and Daniele Bellelli, Joe Rogan, of course, and just try to shine from within. Meditate every day. Thank you.